3 quotations that perfectly capture Lady Macbeth. The most intriguing and villainous character in Shakespeare's Macbeth is undoubtedly Macbeth's wife. She has no name of her own. She simply goes by Lady Macbeth, but this doesn't stop her from being one of Shakespeare's most unique and memorable characters. I'd like to focus on 3 passages delivered by Lady Macbeth. These are not her most famous lines, but they perfectly capture how Lady Macbeth's character develops throughout the play. First, screw your courage to the sticking place. This is a line near the beginning of the play, when Macbeth and Lady Macbeth are planning to kill King Duncan. Macbeth begins to get cold feet. He tells his wife that he doesn't want to murder the king. He says, "We will proceed no further." This angers Lady Macbeth, who then says she doesn't love him, calls him unmanly, and accuses him of being a coward. Lady Macbeth says to Macbeth, "Screw your courage to the sticking place," which simply translates to "be brave." But the reason it's such a great line is the striking image, the metaphor at play. Lady Macbeth is asking Macbeth to imagine his courage as a screw, which needs to be turned and turned until it cannot be turned anymore, having reached its sticking place. If you've ever tightened a screw, you know exactly what she means. She's basically telling Macbeth that his courage isn't tight enough, that it needs to be screwed more deeply into his soul so that he doesn't hesitate and question himself. It's a brilliant image, and it's followed 14 lines later by a similar image when Macbeth describes his wife's character as undaunted metal. Undaunted means undented, without a dent, therefore very tough. And metal is an Elizabethan spelling of metal. There's a nice connection between the screw of the previous line and the metal of this line. You can imagine Macbeth with his little screw of courage in need of tightening. And in contrast, you can imagine Lady Macbeth, made entirely of metal, with lots of tight screws holding her toughness together. That's a useful way to understand the difference between the two. Now for our second passage, which begins "the sleeping and the dead," and it goes on for another few lines. I'll provide some context, and then you'll see the quotation in full. Lady Macbeth's plan is to kill King Duncan and blame the murder on his 2 guards. During dinner, they will get the 2 guards really drunk, so that later that evening, Macbeth can slip past them, unseen, into King Duncan's bedroom. Furthermore, Macbeth will kill King Duncan with the guards' daggers, making it seem as if the guards had murdered the king. This plan is executed almost perfectly, except for one small detail. Macbeth forgets to leave the murder weapon, the bloody daggers, with the drunk and sleeping guards. He returns to Lady Macbeth with the bloody daggers, and she scolds him. Why did you bring these daggers from the place? They must lie there. Go carry them. But Macbeth refuses to return to the scene of the crime. He is afraid to go back and see King Duncan's dead body. In response to Macbeth's fear of seeing the now murdered King Duncan, Lady Macbeth delivers these lines. The sleeping and the dead are but as pictures. 'Tis the eye of childhood that fears a painted devil. There's a lot going on in these 3 lines, many possibilities for interpretation, so for now, let's focus on the first half. The sleeping and the dead are but as pictures. There's a comparison here between sleeping people and dead people. Lady Macbeth says that they look the same. So Macbeth shouldn't be afraid of returning to King Duncan's dead body because a dead person looks exactly like a sleeping person, calm, resting, at peace. Lady Macbeth may also be saying that sleeping and dead people are harmless because they don't move. Just like paintings or drawings, they remain motionless. So Macbeth shouldn't be afraid of seeing King Duncan because King Duncan can't do anything. He's dead. Obviously, Lady Macbeth is omitting a key piece of information, that although sleeping and dead people may look identical, they couldn't be more different. Think of it this way. A painting is not just fabric and pigment. We cannot reduce a painting to its material parts. Rather, a painting is a story, full of emotion and meaning. The sight of the dead King Duncan is not a peaceful, harmless image. It is proof of Macbeth's inner evil, his ambition realized in the worst way, the source of his guilt, his failure to stand up to his wife. But Lady Macbeth insists that the sleeping and the dead are but as pictures. Don't be afraid of seeing the dead King Duncan. He can't do anything to you now. He looks just like he's sleeping. Now let's focus on the second half of the quotation. 'Tis the eye of childhood that fears a painted devil. Painted here means pictured. The eye of childhood means from the perspective of a child or a child's imagination. So, Lady Macbeth is basically saying that only children are afraid of scary pictures. They don't realize that these pictures aren't real, and they have too much imagination. By saying this, Lady Macbeth is mocking Macbeth, calling him a child. She's also downplaying the importance of one's imagination and the harm that might be caused by disturbing images. I remember my high school teacher warning us during class that we should not watch horror films, especially those with violent and shocking content. She said, "Those images will haunt you and stay in your head forever." For saying that, I think my teacher was more intelligent than Lady Macbeth. Images are not just images. They have their own power, and they play on our imaginations in significant ways. Okay, let's get back to our quotation. Here's how we might translate the whole thing. Don't be afraid of the sight of the dead King Duncan. He looks just like a sleeping person. He's harmless as a painting. If you're afraid of him, it's because your imagination is running wild. I'll finish by saying that, in this instance, Lady Macbeth reveals her detachment from reality, her own inability to grasp the full meaning of their crime. The sight of King Duncan's dead body is more than an image, and it makes perfect sense to fear it. It is far more significant than she is willing to let on. And our last passage, which begins, "Naughts had, all spent," and goes on for another few lines. Now, this next quotation doesn't need much context. All you need to know is that Lady Macbeth has become the queen, fulfilling her deepest desires. But there's a problem. To become the queen, she has had to murder and deceive, and like any murderer and liar, she is plagued by a guilty conscience. Lady Macbeth, alone, talking to herself, delivers these lines. Naughts had, all's spent, where our desire is got, without content. 'Tis safer to be that which we destroy, than by destruction dwell in doubtful joy. Did you notice the rhyming couplets? Spent rhymes with content, and destroy with joy. I don't obsess over rhythm and rhyme like some other poetry enthusiasts do, but I really like how Shakespeare has found words that both rhyme and contrast with each other. Spent means wasted, while content means peace of mind. These words couldn't be more different. After all, peace of mind is rarely attained by being wasteful. Destroy is then rhymed with joy, and unless you're an anarchist taking pleasure in destruction, these two words don't go together either. Another detail, notice the alliteration. That's when a group of closely connected words begin with the same letter. In this quotation, it's the letter D. Naughts had, all spent, where our desire is got without content. 'Tis safer to be that which we destroy than by destruction dwell in doubtful joy. Unlike the other two quotations I've presented to you, this one is a little easier to understand, but here's a translation anyway. Nothing's achieved. All is wasted. When your dreams are fulfilled, but you don't have peace of mind. It's better to be murdered than live in constant fear and guilt as the murderer. It's a moment of relief and horror when Lady Macbeth speaks these words. Relief because she finally admits that she has an emotional human side. Horror because of her state, living in anguish, the psychological torture. Throughout the play, Lady Macbeth has behaved like an insensitive executioner, putting murderous plans into action and ignoring the emotional toll it is all taking on her. She has put on a front, acted as if she were undaunted metal, pretended as if those murdered were life-sized paintings of people sleeping. The truth is far deadlier, and in this quotation, Lady Macbeth finally admits that she is suffering because her conscience is crying out. There are so many more terrific lines delivered by Lady Macbeth. For this video, I've selected 3 of my favorites which do a good job of showing Lady Macbeth's character development throughout the play. I hope you enjoyed my take, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts in the comments below. What's your favorite line in Macbeth? Do you share the same fascination and frustration with Lady Macbeth as I do? Thanks for listening, and bye for now.